name is Katie. I'm the clinical supervisor at St. Luke's Monroe campus. So I am a PT by background, but with my position at St. Luke's, I oversee the inpatient rehab department. So that encompasses physical, occupational therapy, and speech therapy. I've been there for, it'll be 4 years this May. I am a graduate of the University of Scranton. I went there for 7 years to get my doctorate degree. The first 4 years were in exercise science, and then the last 3 years were the doctorate in physical therapy. So is the best way just to kind of open it up to questions, and then...
So we can kind of do it however you choose. Like, since you kind of brought up your undergraduate degree, maybe like we can kind of take questions about if anyone has any, questions about like what exercise science is and what that means, or other pathways that you could have went prior to going for the doctorate component, maybe?
Sure. So exercise science, it was actually sport and exercise science. So a health science degree, a lot of it encompassed biology, chemistry, physics. Then there was also kind of the sport and exercise component, which also kind of incorporated some athletic training, a lot of nutrition. I do have my concentration in nutrition studies. So a lot of folks, at least that went to Scranton, did follow the track of exercise science leading into the doctorate program for physical therapy.
So if you chose not to, I know this, you did choose PT, but if you chose not to do PT with an exercise science degree, what could you have done at that point with a bachelor's in that?
So with a bachelor's in exercise science, there are a lot of hospitals that do employ exercise physiologists. You could also kind of go your track of athletic training, go your track with going into the school systems, working with their sports programs, all the way up to collegiate or professional level. So it kind of is a wide variety of different options.
And if you didn't choose that as an undergraduate degree, like what other kind of paths could you have taken for a bachelor's degree to get then to apply to the doctorate program?
That would be kinesiology. That's a big one. Biology, chemistry, physics, exercise science. So those are really the biggest ones that would lead you to physical therapy. I believe now some of the tracks are physical therapy specific, where it's the 6 to 7 year track, and they call it physical therapy going all the way through. But when I was a student at Scranton, I got my bachelor's in 2012 and doctorate in 2015. At least they kind of broke it up between the 4 plus 3 additional years.
So that makes sense. So you had to apply at that point in time to get into the doctorate program once you were already at Scranton and went that way?
One of the nice things about Scranton was that there was an accelerated program. So depending on your kind of package from high school going into college, you could be pre-approved going into the doctoral program as long as you maintained a specific set of requirements. Undergrad, at the time, I think it was a 3.0 undergrad GPA, and then you had to meet all of your prerequisite requirements.
That makes sense. Does anyone have questions about anything related to specifically University of Scranton or anything college-wise questions?
What's undergrad like?
So that would just be the 4 years after you graduate high school. So just the 4 years of college, getting your Bachelor of Science, Bachelor of Arts degree. In my case, it was Bachelor of Science in Exercise and Sport Physiology.
So an undergrad is like a bachelor's or an associate's?
It would be a bachelor's. So, yep. And then the 2 years after college would be the associates, if you wanted to go that route. Now, the PTA program, so I have my doctorate in physical therapy, which is a 7-year doctoral program, but to be a physical therapy assistant, that is a 2-year program after high school. So a little bit different. They do some of the things that are similar, some things that are not. So a physical therapist by background does the initial examination on a patient, creation of a plan of care. They are basically, I guess, for lack of better terms, in charge of the patient. during their stay with you, whether that be in an inpatient or outpatient facility. You would also do your discharge on the patient once they're ready to leave and they've met all of their goals. Physical therapy assistant would be the person following up on all of the progress on the physical therapist patient. They report progress to the attending physical therapist, and then they are able to do gait training, transfer training, therapeutic exercise, all of those that would fall under the umbrella of your plan of care that the initial physical therapist would set up.
I
So,
appreciate
good
you
question.
comparing the differences, and if we can kind of, continue to do that, maybe as we talk about other aspects of that, because I think it's really important to
Absolutely.
recognize that, we have all different levels of students who are interested in different ranges. So
Absolutely.
that was a really great question. Thank you
Yes.
for asking that question. So to do like a PTA, degree then, would that be something like through just like a community college that they would do?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep, absolutely. I believe Northampton Community College also offers that. Yeah.
Any other questions?
While you were doing your 7 years of school, were you like working while during school?
I was. So I did have a part-time job. Actually, we had a Starbucks within the campus. So my part-time job was working there mainly on weekends or sometimes after the end of my classwork. Once I got to graduate school and was doing physical therapy alone, I was a graduate assistant. So that was something that I applied to within the department. And then in addition to my studies, I would also be helping to teach some of the younger folks, and we would consider Doctor of Physical Therapy, so DPT 1, 2, and 3 to account for your 3 graduate years. So once you got to be a DPT 2 and 3, you would help out with the DPT 1 coursework as a graduate assistant.
So do you believe that it's possible to work part-time and also go to school full-time and be able to afford like living by yourself?
That's a great question. So the short answer would be no. Part-time, I think, depending on how many hours you would classify as part-time, but when I think of part-time, I think of anywhere between 20 to 32 hours a week. I do think it would be very challenging to do that and doing the full-time coursework. What I was doing in terms of working was maybe 5 or 6 hours every Saturday and Sunday. And then if I was able to maybe once a week also work maybe 3 or 4 hours during the week, I would do that. But it would all be dependent on my coursework. But to work strictly part-time, I think would be probably a little bit challenging.
And we do need to remember too that like based off of location of the school that you choose,
Yes.
and all those kinds of things, it might change, your scholarship money or your aid and things like that when you're saying to live on your own. Just don't forget. I mean, it's a really great question and being realistic about it, but all those factors do obviously have an effect on that also.
The one thing that was great about being a graduate assistant was that you were offered 50% tuition.
Wow.
So it was definitely wonderful to have that opportunity because you were getting paid and you got the 50% discount on your tuition for the remaining years of your graduate studies, which was huge.
That's
so
awesome.
in terms of loan repayment, really helpful and beneficial to say the least.
So there are a lot of resources to look for,
Oh
like
my goodness,
on
yes.
campus.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Before we move more into college, like any suggestions while some of them are still in high school and aren't current seniors of things, tips or classes that you found to be beneficial or anything like that?
Any of your basic science courses, so specifically biology, chemistry, and physics. When I was a senior in high school, I took AP biology. That was very helpful. And I took honors chemistry and physics. So just trying to prepare you, and math as well. I believe I took calculus when I was in high school, and you do need to take math courses. At least the way Scranton did it, you took almost like a pre-test just to kind of see where you were at with your math coursework, and then they would kind of pre-select you for a course once you started your undergraduate studies.
So back into the realm of college. So once you got into the DPT part of your schooling. Can you talk to them about, like, did you have like clinical rotations? Like, how did that kind of stuff work?
Yeah, so the way Scranton set it up is that we had 4 clinical rotations, each for 8 weeks. You will do an acute care clinical rotations that would be at a hospital. I actually did mine at St. Luke's Bethlehem. Outpatient, which I did in Scranton. Outpatient is kind of neat because I actually did a rotation that was split land therapy and aquatic therapy. It was also adults and pediatrics. So I got just about a little bit of everything during that rotation. I did one in inpatient rehab through Good Shepherd. And then my last rotation was actually school-based pediatrics. So I was at an elementary school doing physical therapy. So that was really interesting. Shall I go through the differences with different Okay. So acute care, like I said, that's your hospital-based setting. So you're seeing patients as soon as they arrive to the hospital. In terms of diagnoses, stroke, heart attack, trauma, congestive heart failure, COPD. You're seeing patients while they're still requiring a lot of medical needs at the hospital, whether that be right from the emergency department as soon as they get there through med surg units or even the intensive care unit. We kind of see a little bit of everything. During the height of the COVID pandemic, we were seeing COVID patients. We continue to treat COVID patients. Generally, they're very weak, require a lot of medical need. So rehab plays a big role in their rehab process and progress. Outpatient is when most people think of physical therapy. You hurt your shoulder, you go to the doctor, get a script, you go to see a physical therapist on an outpatient basis. So that's usually 2 to 3 times a week for about an hour. Same with home care. If you're a home care therapist, you're seeing the patients directly in their home environment. That's usually after a hospitalization stay that you're seeing them there. Again, usually 2 to 3 times a week for about an hour. And then your skilled nursing facilities and inpatient rehab facilities, something like a Good Shepherd, or I know there's a few local skilled nursing facilities in the area, Whitestone, Brookmont, Gardens at Stroud, just to name a few. So that, the patients are receiving anywhere from maybe an hour and a half to 2 hours, all the way up to 3 or more hours of therapy a day. So just kind of depending on what the patient's needs are once they leave the hospital, you'll be seeing the patients either for a little bit of time or quite a bit of time, depending on their diagnosis.
So fast forward to finishing DPT school. Before you can become a licensed therapist, is there, like we know, like for med school, there's tests and things you need. Is there a big PT test that you need to take to get licensed? There is.
There's a national physical therapy exam. It is offered 4 times a year. It does require quite a bit of studying. Usually your college will provide you with a course before you graduate. I know Scranton did. I think it was maybe 2 or 3 days long. After your last clinical rotation, you go back up, you stay overnight at the university, take about an 8-hour course for 2 or 3 days just in preparation. I then spent an additional 8 weeks studying for the exam. So it is an intensive exam. It's a long test. Once you're done, you feel really great about what you've accomplished and what you've achieved. And then there are some states that require what's called a jurisprudence exam, which is the law exam of the state. Just name a few, I believe, New Jersey, California, Washington, D.C., I may be missing one, perhaps Florida, require this exam. So it's an additional exam to your national physical therapy test, and it's covers all of the rules and regulations of that particular state and what they require of you as a physical therapist and what you're responsible for.
Interesting. I wonder, so why some states and not others?
I know, we say the same thing. It is interesting. I know Pennsylvania does not require it. I I'm also licensed in the state of Maryland. I'm about to be licensed in the state of DC. Both Maryland and DC required a jurisprudence exam, but Pennsylvania did not.
Like, additionally then, to get those other certifications in those other states, is that just like a sign of a paper, or is that something additional?
So that you would actually need to have approval from the state to take. So it requires a lot of different applications, different paperwork that you need to send in to the state specifically, and then they'll send you back basically what's called an authorization to test letter. That is both for the law exams as well as the National Physical Therapy exam. You actually need to have pre-approval by the state that you're planning on practicing in prior to even taking the exam.
So once you take up a test, do you need to retest after so many years, or how does that work?
Definitely not to retest, but you do need to have continuing education requirements. So depending on the state in which you want to be licensed in, they all require something a little bit different, which does get challenging if you're licensed in multiple states. But they do require continuing education credits. Usually it's every 2 years.
And like, for example, St. Luke's, like, do they provide you with those opportunities? Do they pay for any of those credits?
They do. Yes. So that would just be a pre-approval from your manager. If there is a course or a certification that you're interested in. I know myself, I took a class through Johns Hopkins University back in the fall. It was a 3-day course on all of the therapies, physical, occupational, and speech therapy, and intensive care units. So that's your ICU. And yeah, that was quite a long course. It was an excellent course, and it was virtual this year. So as most of them are.
Now, I could be wrong, but I feel like I have a few friends that are PT, doctorate of PT level, and they have specialized and gotten other certifications in other areas. I feel like geriatrics or something.
Mm-hmm.
Like, can you talk to them about like additional things that you can accomplish?
Sure. So the American Board of Physical Therapy Specialties offers specialization in a lot of different areas: geriatrics, neurology, sports medicine, orthopedics, pediatrics, oncology. I know I'm probably missing a couple. I think one is electrophysiology. That one seems very hard to me. I don't necessarily think I would take that one. I am a certified stroke rehabilitation specialist, so that's something a little bit different. That was another one of those kind of weekend coursework, and then you have to take an exam at the end of it, and that is an every 2-year recertification as well. So those exams, very challenging. There's a lot, you need to provide a lot of evidence of the number of hours that you've worked regarding specific diagnoses relating to that specialization that you're working toward. And then again, just like the National Physical Therapy exam, it would require close to a year of study just for one examination, which is about 8 hours long.
Guys, any questions up to this point? Anything else about that kind of stuff?
What was your order after high school? Was it like college and grad school?
I'm sorry, can you just
I
repeat?
said, what was your order of schooling after high school?
Mm-hmm. Yep, it was just that. Yep. So in high school, I was big into sports, played volleyball. I knew physical therapy was something I always wanted to do. And so right after high school, I applied to several colleges, specifically the ones that offered the track where you could be pre-accepted directly into the doctoral program. That was really important to me. From my understanding, if you decide to do 4 years and then apply to your doctoral physical therapy program, it is very challenging. I've had friends tell me, you need a 3.9, close to a 4.0 just to even be looked at to get into PT school. So my suggestion for any of you who are really interested in physical therapy, there's a lot of schools in Pennsylvania and the surrounding tri-state area that offer the accelerated program. So I would definitely apply to those.
So there was no gap. You went right from your 4 years of your bachelor right into the doctorate program.
Correct. Mm-hmm. I believe we had Saturday and Sunday off, and then we went we went right into the doctoral program.
No, this might sound silly too, but for your program specifically, like once you got into the doctorate program, was it still Monday through Friday, or did that include like any schooling on Saturdays or anything, or summer?
It was Monday through Friday. The first semester of graduate school was over the summer. It was anatomy and physiology, in addition to a cadaver lab. So, we researched anything and everything regarding anatomy and physiology. And then we went to, it was one of the local medical schools up in the Scranton area, and went to a cadaver lab in which we had to identify different parts of the body.
Do you want to move on to then, was St. Luke's your first job once you gained your degree?
So actually, when I graduated from college, I moved to Virginia. So I worked in a lot of different settings in Virginia: acute care, home care, and outpatient. I'm originally from this area, so I decided to move back home. Like I said, my first clinical rotation was with St. Luke's. I knew they were a great organization, and I've been here ever since I moved back from Virginia, so it'll be almost 4 years in May.
Can you give them like a general, like what you do on a daily basis, like what your day would look like?
Sure. So, like I said before, I'm the supervisor on campus. So I oversee PT, OT, and speech. So when I come in the mornings, I create the schedule for the staff. Census has varied widely, especially after COVID. We are seeing a lot of patients coming into the hospital.
I don't think that might be it. Okay.
So as a clinical supervisor, my day is split between clinical care, and then I have my administrative tasks. I attend the meetings for the department, interdisciplinary meetings. We have what's called rounding. So on a daily basis, we meet with our case management department, which is the department who starts to plan our discharge disposition for patients, as well as the attending physician. And then we go over what's going well for the patient, any barriers to their discharge, and what their discharge needs may be once they leave the hospital. In addition, the clinical work, really the main focus being in acute care is what can we provide to the patient to be able to ensure they get home safely. So that being additional therapy services, whether it be outpatient, home care, short-term rehab, equipment needs, walker, cane, crutches, orthotic needs being back braces, knee braces, ankle braces. And then, we provide a lot of family education as well, how to ensure, your loved one gets home safely, whether it's navigating stairs to get into the house, walking, how do they get into and out of bed, transfers, all of those sorts of things. Yes.
Can you describe your relationship with other healthcare physicians, physician, nurse, OT, all that?
Mm-hmm. So we provide a lot of training with our occupational therapy team. Usually for the initial evaluation, we do see the patient with occupational therapy just to determine if after one session, we can determine all of the needs for the patient to ensure they get home safely. It could sometimes be that day. In fact, I had 3 patients today. I saw them for about 20 minutes, had to make a recommendation. They were out the door. So it can happen very quick. Just as you said, for interdisciplinary team, we are in constant communication with our physicians, as well as case management, just to make sure everyone is on the same page as to when the patient can go home and what they may need.
Anybody else? Questions right now? So can you just maybe talk a little bit more about difference then between a physical therapist versus a PTA, if you wouldn't mind, and you don't have to get specific, but a general idea of the difference of salary level too, and like, you know, advancements and that kind of stuff, maybe?
So in terms of physical therapists, once you graduate college, you'll be working as a staff physical therapist. Salary is tough because it depends on what setting you're in and what state you're in. So it could vary greatly. Typically, highest paying salaries are within our inpatient rehab facilities or skilled nursing facilities. I believe on the lower end would be maybe your outpatient therapy practices. In terms of growth, really also, I know this is tough, but it does depend on the setting. So you could work anywhere from a staff physical therapist up to the director of a clinic if you're working in outpatient. Acute care, I was working as a staff therapist for, I believe it was 3 years, and then I received this job with St. Luke's, which is considered clinical supervisor. So I oversee the entire department at the Monroe campus. Now St. Luke's is 11 campuses, so I report up to a regional manager. She is an OT by background. She has several campuses under her, followed by our network director, who is a PT by background. So in terms of therapy in general, there are a lot of advancement opportunities. When I first started working, our VP of operations was a PT by background. So you really can see kind of the whole gamut from clinical practice all the way up to administrative work. And then in terms of a physical therapy assistant, I know a lot of folks start out as a physical therapy aide. So say, for instance, you're in an outpatient clinic, you help the PTAs, you help the PTs with whatever they may need, whether that be helping patients with a hot and cold pack, taking patients through exercises, being a helping hand in the clinic. Physical therapy assistant, like I said, they report on the patient's progress. So gait training, transfer training, bed mobility training, therapeutic exercise, how do patients navigate stairs. And then once the patient reaches a level that they are ready for discharge, they are then seen again by the PT, making sure the plan of care has been met, all of the physical therapist goals have been met, as well as the patient's personal goals, and then at that time they're ready for discharge.
So when you say aid, that's the first time I think I've ever heard anyone actually talk about that.
Mhm.
Is that a certification?
I do not believe so.
Okay.
I do not believe so. No, I don't believe an associate's degree is required.
Okay.
So that could be something, if you're interested in right out of high school.
Okay.
At least to my knowledge, in the state of PA, it might be different in other states.
That makes sense. And then, and I know that you said like everything obviously varies based off of state and those kinds of things, but based off of the degree necessary for a PTA and their salary, can you give them a general idea? Because I myself don't even know, like, are we talking about like a huge gap in difference? Like, are we talking about a PTA potentially making, early 30 range? Like, I'm not 100% sure even like where they kind of fit in. Not that it's all money, but just to give them a perspective
Sure.
of amount of education to corresponding salary range.
I believe there is quite a significant difference between the two ranges. I do know physical therapy used to be a master's degree, and then it was changed to a doctoral level. I don't believe there are even any master's programs available in the country anymore. I believe by 2020 they all actually had to be changed to a doctoral level. So there was also talk of, will a PTA be moved up to the bachelor's degree level, which might happen. I could definitely see that happening sometime in the future. But yes, at least to my knowledge, I believe there probably is a significant gap in salary between the two.
And I'm sure if you went on Google, you can probably type in like
Oh,
average salary
yes.
for Strasbourg area
Yes,
and get like a general
absolutely.
knowledge.
Are there things about being a PT that like you didn't know like before college or even during college that you wish you kind of knew before, like so stuff that kind of surprised you?
So at least where I work, if I think specifically about the medical status of the patient. There have been times, you're going in, you have your orders to see the patient. You're going in, you think to yourself, this is going to be great. We're going to get the patient up. They're going to start walking, and then something happens. I've had a patient walk with me to a doorway. I said, "Are you okay?" The patient said yes. Next thing you know, he and I were both on the floor. The patient passed out. It's those moments that you need to react quickly, think on your feet. The first thing that went through my mind was, do not let the patient's head hit the floor, because what could be most traumatic is that they end up with a brain bleed. This particular patient had their hip replaced, so that comes with its own gamut of precautions. And I thought, at the end of the day, if the hip comes out because we end up on the floor, it's going to be a lot better than the patient hitting their head on the door or on the tile floor. So, it's thinking about, at least where I work, like I said, the medical aspect, something could change on a dime, and you just have to be quick, think on your feet, and think could be the best outcome for the patient. What can I do to help facilitate the best outcome?
So if someone originally does not know how to think on their feet, is there a way that that person can learn to do that?
Definitely. So just it being in, at least from my perspective, in the hospital and experience, you get a lot of different information from a lot of different interdisciplinary groups. So I've learned a lot about case management and discharge planning. I've learned a lot from our occupational and speech therapy teams. I've learned a lot from the nursing teams and physicians, just from another medical perspective. And the thing to always remember is that you're working as a team. You're, a part of the team caring for that patient. So, if there's ever an issue, I never hesitate to reach out to someone. Someone will always help you. And that's what I learned is just, great teamwork and great communication, that, if something is not going the way it should be, at least from a medical side, someone will be there and they'll help.
So when you started your first position at your first job, did they give you any kind of training period or something, that you had someone with you to kind of ease into it?
Absolutely. So my first job right out of college was school-based pediatric physical therapy. I saw a range from preschool all the way up to high school. So definitely different. I had orientation with another physical therapist for a few weeks before they kind of set me off on my own. We ran through everything together, from the initial assessment with the patient all the way up through, do we think this patient needs our services anymore? In that setting, it was communication with the family, number one, as well as the teachers.
How about some of the best things you consider about your job?
Definitely the relationships that you build, not only with your team, but with the patients. We've had some great success stories. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Great success stories, you help patients walk again, and you see that the patient feels it, the family sees it, and it can be an emotional event in the best way possible. Great success stories, just knowing that you're helping the patient achieve their mobility goals, it's great to see. So that's definitely the best part about my job. Mm-hmm. Yes.
So you spent a long time, like a lot of years, going to school and being in this profession. Do you feel like you would do it for the rest of your life? Like, do you feel like it was worth it, having all of those years? Like, did you know for sure you were going to stick with that?
Yes, I did. I always say to myself, in any profession, you're going to have good days and you're going to have bad days. The good days are very good, and sometimes the bad days, you say to yourself, what can I do tomorrow to make tomorrow better? I never once thought that physical therapy wasn't right for me after I started working in the profession. Certainly, you may find that one setting works for you better than another, and there's nothing wrong with that. That's all learning and growing, and I've worked in all of the settings, and it took me. I'm now about 7 years out of college, and I've finally found which setting is right for me, which is acute care and working inside the hospital. When COVID first hit, it was definitely a change, to say the least. Very challenging, both physically, emotionally. You saw a lot of things going on in the hospital. But like I said, too, you saw a lot of success and, a lot of smiles from patients. And that's the best part of the job.
And like you said, it wouldn't be a hard switch to go from outpatient to different. It's not much different. It's just applying for a new job and starting in that location. So that
Correct.
is good flexibility then.
Absolutely. And, wherever you begin work, they're going to put you through an orientation period where you're going to be with someone every step of the way. So, I said to myself when I actually started outpatient, it was my first time working outpatient. Oh my goodness, how am I supposed to know how to be a physical therapist on my first day? It wasn't anything like that. The team, they bring you in, they give you a lot of support. They will help you anything. There were certain things I didn't know how to do. Not a problem. Let me show you how to do this.
That's
and
great.
Yeah.
And ultimately, you're helping them because, they're having to cover less because there's a new person. So
Absolutely.
again, if everyone can pull their weight, it's beneficial for them to train you well and all
Absolutely.
that, which is great.
Yeah.
Good. Any other questions you guys have?
What did you do in high school to kind of lock in your decision on physical therapy? If you have like a bunch of other options, what was it that kind of made you choose this one?
So just my personal story is that my best friend in high school hurt herself playing volleyball. She went to physical therapy, would come back, tell me all about it, what they did, and, the progress that she was making to be able to return to sport. And from that story, I've always wanted to be a physical therapist. I was really big into sports myself in high school. And so I always knew I wanted to do something in the medical field. I wasn't quite sure which direction I was going to take, whether, I kind of thought once about maybe physician, maybe nursing. But it was something about that story that I just knew I was going to be a physical therapist. And I haven't changed my mind since. And I think I was maybe a sophomore in high school. So I always knew that this was right for me.
And to go back, if something wasn't right, you do have a bachelor's degree to fall back on.
Absolutely.
So if you were practicing as a PT and something happened, you were unable to do that or you didn't want to do that anymore, you still have a degree that you can do something with. So you kind of have to keep that in mind also.
And I had a lot of friends who actually did the accelerated program, exercise science to PT. And at the end of the 4 years, they said, no, I don't actually think physical therapy is right for me. They went on to work either as an exercise physiologist. One went on to work in community health and kind of went more the public health track. Lots of different avenues you can take. So you're never stuck in one. If something isn't working out or you feel it's not right for you, you could, do education as well, whole avenue for that. So a lot of different career paths.
That's awesome. Now, I know that one of my friends, they all went to Misericordia, which isn't that far from Scranton, and she wound up becoming a traveling physical therapist for a little bit of time, and now she's in Minnesota. Do you know anything about, I know everyone's always interested in traveling nursing, but do you know anything about traveling, like PT?
Yeah, so I do have a couple friends who do that. It's a great avenue to explore if you're not quite sure what state you want to work in or what setting you want to work in. So I had a friend right out of college. He decided to do travel physical therapy. His first one was outpatient in Philadelphia. Next one, I believe, was home care in San Diego, California. So, he was able to kind of see a little bit of everything. They're usually 12 to 13 week contracts. So it's nice if you're not quite sure which setting you want to work in, because you'll only be there for, 3 to 4 months at most, and then you move on to the next thing. So you say, okay, I've done outpatient for 3 months, not quite, what I really enjoy. Let me try acute care next time. And I think it kind of sets you up for success. You can kind of see a little bit of everything, get your feet wet in those settings, and then, once you're ready to kind of settle down somewhere, you can really pick the setting you want to work in.
And you have to see a lot of cool places.
Oh my goodness,
right?
yes.
Like experience a lot of things. And
Mm-hmm.
I believe that the money is quite okay then too, right?
The salary, that's probably the highest. Yep.
Okay.
For travel therapy. Yep. Mm-hmm.
So I mean, you might not necessarily have like a whole slew of options, although now you might. I don't really know. But
Yeah, I think there's quite a few. You could probably pick any state, even Hawaii. I had a friend that did travel therapy out in Hawaii.
just knowing that you're stuck there for those 12 weeks, whether it's good, bad, or in between.
Correct. And then sometimes they do offer you something full time. If you really enjoy where you're working and you make great relationships, I've been told that sometimes they just say, hey, would you mind staying full time? And that could work too.
That's cool. Any negatives that you want to share?
At least from what I do as a clinical supervisor, still working on time management. So that can always be a challenge. From my perspective, it's dividing clinical care time versus administrative time. So just trying to make sure you have enough time for each. Purely in the clinical setting, I know when I worked in outpatient PT, you could have overlap with patients. So you're thinking, okay, now when am I going to have time to do my documentation? Okay, well, maybe this now might get pushed to the end of the day. And then, it's the end of your day, you're ready to go home. Oh boy, I've got 4 notes to now chart on. So just trying to get that time management balance figured out. That comes with experience. 100%. I'm still figuring it out. I've been doing this for almost 4 years.
Something to start working on now in high school or you'll start doing that in college for sure.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
Any tips of advice other than kind of what you've already mentioned about, trying to find the pathway for the direct connect into the program, or do you have any other tips or advice for them on college in general or becoming a PT, anything?
Definitely I would say the biggest one is your coursework in high school. If you're interested in physical therapy or really anything, in the healthcare field, making sure that you're taking bio. I know I graduated from Nazareth High School. There was an anatomy course. I took that. Your chemistry, physics, anything science related is a good thing. Looks good on your transcripts.
Did you do any volunteering or anything at that time before you
I did.
started college?
I did. And in fact, to get, I believe, yes, now I'm remembering, to get into the accelerated program, I believe you had to have so many hours of observation experience. And I think I did one in outpatient and one in acute care. I don't recall the number of hours, and I'm sure that that's probably changed now, but it wouldn't be anything hands-on, just purely observation. And some students actually have said to me, Katie, I did the observation, realized this wasn't the right fit for me. That even prior to going into college, or, hey, Katie, this was awesome. I know this is definitely what I want to do.
So if you have that opportunity and you're thinking
Yes.
about this, that might be really nice to see.
And I do know St. Luke's does offer observation hours for students. Like I said, I think I did mine there when I was a student applying to
So if
school.
anyone's interested, we can always get you kind of set up or get you to the right contacts.
Mhm, absolutely.
Anybody else have other questions?
So how hard being a physical therapist, do you think it's a hard job, or is it average hours something?
It definitely has its challenges. Where I am in the hospital, you're doing a thorough chart review on the patient. You as a clinician need to know, is this patient appropriate for therapy today? You certainly can reach out. Physician, you speak with the physician, you speak with nursing. Sometimes they know information that isn't yet in the patient's chart that they can provide you with. But just kind of making those clinical decisions, knowing even, when to stop. If patient's having an adverse reaction to something, or, that you're doing an exercise with the patient, this is causing pain. You just need to know when to stop, or you need to know, okay, patient did great with yesterday's treatment session, we can now advance tomorrow. So it's just kind of those clinical decisions that you just want to be confident in making them.
And you learn some of that through school, but you also through practice. So
Absolutely.
it's not something like she said you need to know right out of the gate. It's a learning kind of process.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Anybody else? Anything while she's here? Is anyone actually truly interested in PT, like for sure? Or we're all still kind of figuring it out, which is why she's here. So that's good.
What are you guys interested in?
I have like 3 options.
Okay.
Nursing, anesthetics, PT, well actually 4. Physical trainer and then architecture.
Okay.
Wow. Okay, cool. Shaheen?
I'm thinking a bit more position around, but it's good to like hear a lot other health professions.
Mhm. Yeah.
Claudia?
Nurse, dentist, or architecture.
Oh wow, a lot of architecture. Cool.
Yeah.
Rosa?
Most likely pharmacist.
Pharmacist, okay.
Probably PA.
Oh, nice. Okay.
I have no idea.
And that's okay.
Yeah.
That's
okay.
why I liked to join this club, because I think it wouldn't hurt to like get more information
Absolutely.
and be educated on the subject.
Definitely. Mm-hmm. Yep. Well, healthcare is in demand. I can tell you that much. So, all of what you've all described, you will certainly find work.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Final call for any questions? No?
Do you think COVID might make it like more difficult for like patients to like heal and get better during physical therapy? Do you think COVID worsens that or makes it longer?
So COVID has been challenging because COVID affects everyone differently.
Yeah.
So I've worked with patients with COVID who have had minimal effects or deficits from it. I've worked with patients who have had significant deficits and have been affected by COVID medically. So it's a great question. It's a hard question to answer. I've kind of seen a wide range of different things. I've had to teach people how to walk again who are vented. I've, helped people walk who have had minimal, effects from COVID. So that's tough. We've certainly seen in general a lot of generalized weakness, fatigue, and like an oxygen desaturation requiring like supplemental oxygen, pain, a lot of different things happening. There's like a whole GI, like a nausea, vomiting, diarrhea component sometimes. So, it really depends on the patient.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Good question.
Yeah.
What's the difference between physical and occupational?
Good question.
Mm-hmm. So physical therapy looks at gross motor function. So we look at walking patterns or gait. How do you navigate stairs, transfers, kind of when you're thinking gross or big motor movements. Occupational therapy focuses on your activities of daily living. So are you able to get into and out of the shower on your own? Dressing, meal preparation, medication management. Now we do overlap in a couple of things. So we both look at gait or walking. We both look at transfer techniques, but then we each kind of have our own little separate, more on the physical therapy side, again, depending on what setting you're working in, at least in acute care, navigation of stairs. If you're using, say, a walker today, how can we maybe progress you to using a cane tomorrow? So more of just the gross motor movements for physical therapy. Great question. Sorry, I probably should have said that in the beginning. Great question.
The occupational therapy does not require a doctorate.
It does not. That's a master's level. I believe they are transitioning to a DOT though. I do have a few friends that work for St. Luke's who are in their doctoral programs now. But right now I believe it is an accelerated 6-year program, maybe 5 even.